So who was, maybe Mike, you can help me out, who was next here? Matthew.
You talked about the untouched villages, the scaling to new areas, but in the areas where you've already been operating, not just for you, but for all microfinance, there is this problem of saturation, competition for among microfinance loan recipients. And I believe some research shows increasing defaults in those areas, default rates. What, is SKS thinking about doing to address that problem? What are others, what do you think about that issue in the sort of already served areas, competition and rising defaults?
Sure. Anybody have a marker, a bench marker? Or a whiteboard marker, better yet? Yeah. Figure we're in a classroom. Oh, this is perfect. Great. All right, and also I'm going to embarrass you a little bit, Matthew. Matthew is the son of Lloyd and Suzanne Rudolph, who are my dissertation advisors at the University of Chicago. And so that put me in this academic mode here. All right, so the question was, look, if there's heavy competition, doesn't that lead to a problem where you could be over-indebting people and so on and so forth? Our view in India is that an average household, this is based on data from the World Bank and others, are borrowing about 25,000 rupees, about $500 US. Most microfinance institutions lend about 8,000. They're conservative, they're getting to know the customers, progressive lending. So even if you have MFI 1, MFI 2, MFI 3, we think there's still plenty of room for all three to be there. Where you start getting into very heavy competition is when all three of us start moving into the 10, 15, 20,000 range. Now, I would submit that that's a very small percentage, even in a heavily penetrated, relatively heavily penetrated market like India. There's very few places where you've got MFIs lending, that large amounts. Excuse me. Now, even if they are lending that large amounts, at that point, when you get into a 15, 20,000 loan, you start seeing types of competition that we think are quite healthy. So we do have an individual loan program where we take our borrower out of a group system, high net borrowing, private banking for the poor, if you will, and give them a 30 to 50,000 rupee loan. It's higher touch, so we're monitoring more closely what's happening. Are they borrowing from others? Are they getting into trouble? And if you do it well, if you do it with that approach, then I think you can be relatively insulated from those types of problems. But if you don't do it well, if you're blindly, as we see in consumer finance, throughout the world, lending without knowing the customer extraordinarily well when you get into that individual lending, then I think it's ripe for failure. Now, some of the things that we're discussing in India is a credit scoring or a credit bureau where we start, at least for those individual larger loans, sharing information. That's going to be something to mitigate that. But in my mind, at 10 to 15% market penetration, we've got a long way to go before that becomes a significant problem. It's on the horizon, but the need of the day is more about just scaling from my perspective.
I'm curious, though, just a quick follow-up. At the bottom end, though, right? There's competition there at the bottom end, so the best, most entrepreneurial small borrowers may have already been reached. So you're actually, with the small loan, you may be reaching the less entrepreneurial, less reliable borrower if you're the MFI who comes in to reach that, sort of the less competition at the bottom end as well.
Right. So I'm going to go back to another slide there, jumping around. If you do the group formation properly, if you get this group formation down, right, where borrowers, there's a joint liability group, if borrowers genuinely realize that their future loans are in jeopardy and the entire center's loans are in jeopardy if one of them gets into a repayment issue. If you do that well, if you credibly can make that case, then 99% of the time they will make sure that what you don't know about a borrower's lender, they will certainly know. And if you've convinced them that they're really at risk of their future loans, that's how we ensure that that doesn't happen. Now, where you get a problem is where that group formation doesn't happen in a proper way and you start getting sloppy. Then you get those types of issues.